G'day, mate. 40 here. There's a new movie on Amazon Prime. It's called 13 Lives, and terrific movie. It's about the rescue of those boys in Thailand, right? Boys' soccer team goes exploring in a cave. Big rains come. They get stuck up inside the cave. Is that Thailand is a country of about 275 million people. They put 100 government agencies, the whole nation rallied around what was going on to rescue these boys. And 275 million people, they're elite military units, right? They're Navy SEALs, right? 275 million people can't rescue these boys, right? It takes 2 Englishmen flying in to rescue these boys. And the boys could have been rescued 4 days earlier if the Thai authorities had not prevented the English divers from getting it done. So, wow, 2 people get done from England, what 275 million Thai cannot. Let's check out Tucker Carlson.
Good evening and welcome to a special edition.
Nah, not interested in a special edition. All right, so maybe I'll find Duvid, see if Duvid's around.
His report back.
There's some Richard.
Is everything okay with the dog?
Everything's okay with the dog. He cleaned a car.
That was very good of him.
Oh,
a real car or a toy car?
I really
a real car. He used a hose on a car.
Come on, 40.
So you expect the rise of people like this? But
talking about the rise of Republicans.
To go back to where we started, what really fascinates me is the way that the left have responded to this, and with a certain degree of anger and concern. And I think that perhaps they are right to, because that term, Christian nationalism, and she's explicitly saying that you can be any race and be a Christian, which of course you can. And she's also explicitly saying, well, as long you can be any race and live in our Christian utopia, everybody's going to want to be where we are. Then it's difficult for them to get her with stuff other than the stuff that they'll go for. Oh, she's wacky. She thinks the election was stolen.
Talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene.
That's true. That's going to be true, I reckon, in 2024 or soon of basically most Republican candidates. That'll be like a doctrine of faith to be a Republican candidate, that you're I believe they now call it an election denier. So that'll just be the new abortion. So that's not really much.
And interestingly, I saw this. Actually, Hispanics are more conspiratorial than whites, and so so much of the Hispanic kind of entree into the Republican Party is on the basis of like COVID denial and stuff like this. So yeah, it's going to get a lot worse. Yeah.
So it's the new thing. It'll be the new marker. You won't be able to get anywhere in the Republican Party if you're not an election denier.
Yes, it's happening right now. Yeah.
It's election denier, the non-election denier. That's going to be it. So there's another polarization, and she, of course, will. So I think unfortunately, for those of us that are interested in ideas and being thoughtful about things and nuance. I see great things ahead for Marjorie Taylor Greene. Oh yeah, I think we're going to hear a lot more about her in the coming months.
I agree. I think she might very well be on the presidential ticket. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, yeah. So Republicans is the party of denial. That's Richard and Ed. There. Let's get
of yours. And I think even your witch's book is in some ways about Christian nationalism, writ large, and how regimes of that type can emerge in history. But why I suggested this was that it really is in the news in a surprising way, in the way that maybe white nationalism was in the news a few years ago. I think that is now morphed to Christian nationalism, and it's something that might actually be even more dangerous and widespread. And I think it's worth talking about the differences between Christian nationalism and white nationalism. But Lauren Boebert has explicitly said, I look for the separation of church and state in the Constitution, and it's not there. It was just in some letter that Jefferson wrote.
The church is supposed to direct the government. The government is not supposed to direct the church. That is not how our founding fathers intended it. And I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk that's not in the Constitution. It was in a stinking letter, and it means nothing like what they say it does.
I think we can go into the degree to which he's right and the degree to which he's wrong. Marjorie Taylor Greene, the other wild banshee of Congress, these new kind of post-Trump, crazy people who have entered the legislature, she has also openly identified it. Now, when I watched an interview of hers with a very mainstream commentator named Michael Knowles on the Daily Wire, I guess. And she basically just described Christian nationalism as conservatism. So she said things like, as a Christian, I put my faith in Jesus Christ, and he's my savior. I am a sinner, and all basic stuff. And then she said that, but as a Christian nationalist, we love everyone, and we want to protect the border. And
well, I'm a Christian. I have my full faith in God, and Jesus is my savior. I'm not perfect. I'm definitely a sinner. I know that for sure. And that's why I put my faith in the Son of God who died on a Roman cross so that my sins could be forgiven. And that's the profession of my faith. Being a nationalist means I just love my country. I love America. I'm proud to be an American, but also means that I believe that Americans' hard-earned tax dollars should be used for America and our interests, such as securing our border, making sure that our economy is strong, that our businesses are put first, not other businesses in other countries. I care about our kids. I care about our kids a lot. I care about our kids so much that I believe it's imperative that we protect them from the godless left and their plans to lie to the kids, confusing them about gender, drag queens in schools, CRT, racist teaching and ideologies. And I care about our kids' future. And that means that I think that our government should be working for America's interests first.
It just kind of sounded like a light reduction of just kind of Trumpism, or really just the Republican Party. So it's questionable of what they actually mean. That's
why it's so clever, because to a great extent, it is European ethno-nationalism.
So I went off on a rant last night. Something just occurred to me. I know many times when I was growing up, I would think there's something essential to being a Seventh-day Adventist. I was raised a Seventh-day Adventist. Then I converted to Judaism, and I thought, there's some essential quality to being Jewish as opposed to being Christian, as opposed to being Muslim. And then I got older and realized that every essential quality that I wanted to ascribe to any of these groups was contingent. All right, it's a word that academics love, but for good reason. All right, me being a good person is contingent upon certain situations. All right, so if you employ me or you lend me your property, all right, or if you're friends with me, I'm not going to steal from you. All right. Theft is not something that tempts me. Other things tempt me. All right. I'm just a man. I'm weak. I get tired. I have carnal urges, but theft and ripping people off and treating other people's property carelessly, not generally a tendency of mine. So, 40, when it comes to borrowing and returning property and treating it as though it's his own, it tends to be, I think, what people would call good. But on the other hand, I was hanging out with a friend. Let me just put it this way. I was hanging out with a friend for hours, and every time he said something, like he was speaking in an exploratory, questioning manner, and he was kind of thinking out loud and haltingly moving towards a point. And almost every time he did this, I would jump in and give the definitive answer. And he said, "You've got the answer to everything, don't you?" Right? So that's quite obnoxious. All right. And it's a trait I've had my whole life. All right. So when I was in second grade, on my report card, it said, Luke's always very willing to share his opinion with the class, but he needs to learn to be more considerate of the slower thinker. I had a classmate, Doug, in high school, and he tells me about 8 years after high school that his memories of me in high school are not fond. Luke Ford was an arrogant little turd who was always right, regardless of whether he was right. Whatever his arguments lacked in substance, he made up for in verve and raw rhetorical abilities. Luke frequently seemed illogical. So not such a good person there. So long time no talk. Donny Pauling, how are you, sir? What's going on?
Oh, I'm doing good.
Excellent.
Hopefully the sound's coming through my mic and
Yep.
not through the phone.
Yep. Sounds good. So for people who don't know you, why don't you give like a 2, 3, 4, 5 minute kind of overview of the incredible journey that you've been on? And I haven't spoken to you in a year or two, so give us an overview of your incredible journey and bring us up to date with what's going on with you these days.
So when I first met, well, first of all, I was a pastor, so I guess I should start there. I was raised the son of a Protestant pastor and hated anything and everything about religion because I thought it was all a bunch of crap at the time during my teen years. So in my early 20s, I became a producer in the adult industry, film producer. Did that for almost 10 years. And because of a string of events and a group of missionaries, I guess you'd call them, that changed my mind about some things. I got out of that business and I became a speaker. I started being invited all over the world to speak, and that was pretty cool. People would pay me to come and talk about myself. So, yeah, I don't think it gets a whole lot better than that. And I did that again for almost a decade again, pretty close. And then my life was completely changed when a teenager, a 16-year-old girl that was living with me in my house, her family was living there, made some accusations. Not saying I was always appropriate, but she made some accusations that weren't entirely true, but some that were, though. I had to do some time for that, and that was a complete life changer. Get back out and go from having a six-figure income before to giving away government phones on the side of the road, those Obama phones they call them, and did that until I could get back into school, get a few more degrees, and try to figure out life. Went back to digital marketing because one of my customers took me back. One thing I didn't say was that when I got out of adult and I was traveling and speaking, I was also doing digital marketing for car dealers for a living. So one of my clients took me back after I'd been giving away phones for a while. Wasn't near enough money to thrive. It was enough to survive, though. And then, since I've talked to you last, some interesting things happened. My mom and my stepdad moved to Arkansas after my stepdad retired. And then they did that in June of last year. And then in August, he died of COVID. So I went back there to make sure my mom was okay in this new place. And while back there, my stepfather's death kind of just prompted me to do something I've always wanted to do. Instead of trying to obtain more dealership clients back there for digital marketing for the car dealers, I told my mom, I says, you know what, I've always wanted to drive a semi-truck, and so I went to school and I learned to do that. That's what I'm doing now. I'm out driving trucks, and approved as of today to buy my own, and thinking about doing that. I've got a pretty decent job right now with a company that pays really well. They're paying $150 a year. So it's kind of hard to give that up when it's guaranteed, but I am the type of person who likes to go out on my own, and I think that I could probably, beat what I'm making now by doing it on my own, although that might be very naive. So that's the very basics.
What are the biggest challenges with being a truck driver?
Other people that drive on the road are really annoying. They don't give you near as much room as you need to stop. They pull right in front of you, or they'll, they're constantly annoying. But just kind of learn to deal with it. And this company I'm with doesn't pay by the mile; they pay by the hour. So I remind myself of that. So when someone's slowing me down, or being annoying, I just slow down even further and don't worry about it, because paid by the hour makes up for all of that. It's a fun job though. I like it. It definitely suits me. I travel 11 Western states and been
So
really enjoying it.
what is your life like now that you're earning pretty good money compared to when you were just barely scraping by and working a ton of hours and going to school at the same time?
So, I was still going to school when I got this job. I was getting my master's at the time in business administration, my MBA, but I had to put that on hold because of all the hours that I'm in a truck. And besides that, I really like this life. So, but the flip side of that is you're hardly ever out of the truck to spend the money. So I'm putting money into the 401k plan that they have, which is really good. I bought myself a diesel pickup, crew cab 4x4 GMC, and my plan is to stick a camper on it, and just basically stay in that on my days off, going to different places camping, because I'm literally off 24 to 48 hours at the very most each week, out of the truck. I mean, because I'm a team driver, so even when I'm not on shift driving, I'm still in the truck. Like right now, I'm talking to you from the sleeper.
And how about repairing relationships? Has that happened since you?
It has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that process been like?
So the girl who made the accusations, I had found her on the streets of Salt Lake City. It took a long time to find her. She'd been homeless. She had actually been trafficked. She had been kidnapped and trafficked after she basically found a guy on Tinder and thought she was going on a date, and disappeared. And a lot of this I didn't know at the time when I found her, but later, after we started making up, and she started sharing what was happening, it made a whole lot of things make sense back at the time when I did find her. But yeah, he had taken her on this date, and at the end of the date, he asked her to get into this other car and put her in the back seat of a two-door car in between two people, and away they went. They drugged her. They sold her. The stuff she went through really disturbs me. It's really hard to talk about, so I just gloss over it. But I found her on the streets at her mother's request. She asked me to go look for her. I found her, sent her back to her mom, back east, and then she had a boyfriend. This is a new development since I talked to you last. She had a boyfriend that she was living with and had a second child with. The first child she got pregnant with on the streets, and that's kind of right at about the time that I found her. She was 15 weeks pregnant with him. That got her off all the drugs that she was on the very moment she realized she was pregnant. She just gave them all up cold turkey and has done really well. But this new boyfriend back there, there was a domestic violence incident, and he ran her over with a car, and she called me for help because she knew I would help. And that turned out to be a great thing. I went back there. I purchased a motor home, went back there, let her live in it, on my mother's property. And this was while I was going to the truck driving school.
Hey, let's do a timeline. So give me the year, if you remember the month. When did you meet this girl, and under what circumstances, and how old was she, and how old were you? What was going on in her life at the time? What was going on with your life at the time?
Well, back when she accused me, she was 16.
Yeah, but when did you meet her? What was the year that you met her?
I had met her and her family. So her sister, her mother. Really, they actually moved into my house in 2011, I think. No, 2010.
And when did you meet her? Was it 2010?
Yeah.
And how did you meet her and her family?
So I basically had someone who had been really happy about the speaking I was doing and thought I could change the lives of these two teen girls who were not doing so well in school.
And you're speaking at this time as an anti-pornography activist.
Right.
When did you begin that? Like, when did you leave the industry and start speaking out against it?
In 2006 is when I left it.
So now you're
by
4
this time
years.
I'd been.
You're 4 years into anti-porn activism. Are you a credentialed pastor by this time?
Yeah, I had gone to seminary and I was a pastor and Protestant pastor, and I was speaking. And
were you married?
I was not married, although I did. I mean, I'd been married before at the very beginning of my adult career. That ended because of the adult career, and I tried after getting back out of adult and becoming a pastor. I tried to reconcile with my wife, that I'd had before, and we did date for 9 months. Didn't work out. And it was right at the end of that dating that this family entered my life.
So
one
a
of the
family,
grandparents.
meaning a mother, a father, and two daughters?
A mother and two daughters. The
mother and two daughters.
Yeah, the father was out of the picture, except for like once or twice a year. They were divorced, and so he'd only see him a few times a year. And their grandmother basically thought that I would be good for them to get them back on the right track. Not that they'd pay attention to me because of the work that I was doing. I was speaking at a lot of events, including youth camps and everything.
And how old were the girls when you met them?
They were just barely teens, so 13 and 14.
And when did you realize that one in particular was going to be trouble for you? That you didn't have just a pastoral interest in her?
Well, so at the very beginning, I mean, she would say things like, I'm going to, when she's 13, she'd say, I'm going to marry you someday. And I thought that was cute, and so did her dad, because, I knew her dad, her adopted dad, and the one that was divorced from her mother. And so we would laugh about that. And then when she's 16 and really becoming a very beautiful woman, I told him, I says, she's still saying that, but now it seems more like she's meaning it because she's been saying it for so long, and she says it in a different way now. And, she does a lot of flirting. And I says, it's actually, I was honest with him. I says, it's getting pretty difficult for me because she still lives in my house at this time, and she's running around with very little on. And, she, like I said, she was a beautiful, beautiful girl. And I said to him, I need you to talk to her because, this is becoming a struggle. And I told another person, too. He was a school principal in the area where I was living because, in the Protestant world, it's very popular to be accountable to other peers, to other people in your own peer group. And so I was telling them, this is starting to get tough for me, because now she's not a girl. Now she's a woman. She's very developed, very curvy, and she's running around with little to nothing on, in the house. So I need help. Well, her dad said he'd be proud to call me his son-in-law. He says a lot of people would give you shit for that, but I wouldn't be one of them. And I didn't expect that answer. And it kind of knocked me off guard. And I started, to be honest, trying to rationalize, why it wouldn't be such a bad thing. It's like, in 38 states, she'd be legal. And, there's an age difference, but there's, I found a list of over 24 celebrities with bigger age differences and all the stupid rationalizations going on. But when I finally told her that, she's going to have to move out of my house, I was angry at the time, over some stuff that she'd pulled, and I was very mean. said some very rude things to her and told her she's going to have to leave. And then she went down and told the police that we'd been having a sexual relationship and having sex 3 times a day and all this stuff. I mean, I wasn't even capable of doing that, by the way, but it's another story. But she, later tried to take a lot of it back, and they wouldn't let her. They said, victims do that all the time. They change their minds. And anyway, I ended up firing the attorney I had because he wanted to attack her on the witness stand, and I really cared about her. I didn't want her to go through that, because she'd already been through some other similar incidents when she was younger. And I didn't want to put her through all that kind of crap again because, when she was 6, someone had done some stuff to her when she was 6 years old. And going through the process of telling people about that had really destroyed her life in many ways. I didn't want that to happen again. I wanted it to be over quick. And I was kind of naive, too, about the long-term repercussions. But I fired my attorney, and I made a deal with the prosecutor, and I told them if they would, give me charges that were true, I'd plead guilty. If they'd give me charges that were not true, I'd plead no contest, but make it pursuant to People v. West, which is different than a normal no contest in that you're stating that there's not a factual basis for this. So the charges that carried the time that they wanted to give me were not true. So I pleaded no contest pursuant to People v. West, and that really changed everything. So that happened when she was 16 years old. So now she's in her mid-20s. We talk nearly every day, and when she
Oh, we just lost internet connection. So
motorhome I purchased.
Okay, sorry, we just lost connection. So, okay, there has to be a gap between her turning you into police and you getting back in contact with her. So, what was the time frame? I assume where you were not talking with her regularly.
There was almost. Let's see. It was a little more than 5 years. Oh, no, almost 5 years. Almost 5 years. Not quite. And when we finally did start talking, at first it was just to get her safe and send her to her mom, back east. But then after that domestic violence incident, and she asked for my help, that's when I, put her in a motorhome temporarily on my mother's property. And I lived in my mother's house, and she lived in the motorhome. And we did a lot of talking, a lot of healing, and come to a lot of, tears over stuff that had happened, and apologized to each other and forgave each other. And then I took her back up by her mom, and put her in an RV park in the motorhome I'd purchased, and I've been paying all of her bills ever since. I never have gone and saw her in person again, but we talk on Messenger and the phone and stuff just about every single day. And, I told her not to feel trapped because she'd felt trapped, with the guy that she had the baby with, because he was supporting all of them. And so I told her, I'm making enough money. You don't need that. I'll just, I'll pay things for you until you're able to be on your own. So I pay her space rent, her food, her electric bill, their clothes, anything that she basically needs. And I give her a debit card and put $500 a month on that for her too.
And do you think you might end up marrying this woman?
No. It's never going to be anything but appropriate from now on. I don't even have those feelings romantically anymore. I care very much about her, but it's more like how you care about your daughter. And she's done a lot of changing. I've done a lot of changing. And I'm very proud of what she's accomplished. And, I tell her that the promise that I've made is that I'll never, ever be inappropriate in any way again. So I'm always going to live up to that.
Now, one realization I've had over the past few years is the contingent nature of all identities. That I've come to realize that just because someone's Christian or Jewish or black or Muslim or homosexual, it doesn't necessarily tell you much about them, because there's no essential quality to being a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim. That you need to know a lot more things. And so too, there's no essential quality to being a sex offender. Just because you've been convicted of breaking the law with a 16-year-old girl, there's nothing necessarily that follows from that. You can't make a lot of deductions. Therefore, because Donny did this, therefore we know X, Y, Z. I mean, people are much more, generally speaking, complicated than that. And yeah, we do make some generalizations. So if someone's incapable of graduating from high school, there's a pretty good chance that they're below average in intelligence. If someone has a master's degree, there's a pretty good chance that they're above average in intelligence. If someone's fat, they probably can't run too fast. So there's some generalizations you can make, but you can't deduce the essence of someone from whether they're a Christian, a Jew, a homosexual, a black, or even a pornographer or a preacher. I mean, these are identities that people have, but there's nothing inherent that then flows on from these identities. Do you have any thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, in fact, I say some similar things, but I make it specific to the sex offender genre or class of people, whatever you want to call it, because the laws that we have just lump everyone together, and that's just not like, exactly what you're saying. People are just so different. If I would have done the exact same things that led or even been accused and had done all that I was accused of, but had I lived in Nevada instead of California, a crime wouldn't have been committed. Or, because Bethany was of legal age in 38 out of 50 states. So, but yet I'm still lumped in with a person who has done the most horrible things to the youngest possible child. There's not really there's a few ways that they try to distinguish some differences, but not nearly enough. For example, if this is how weird it is in California, the way that the tiered system that just went into effect a few years ago. If Bethany would have been younger, I would actually be on the registry for a shorter time. It's crazy. Had she been 14, I would be on the registry for 7 fewer years than her being 16. They just can't figure out how to categorize, because sex offenders are very politically advantageous to whoever's trying to be tough on crime. They'll get away. It's the one group that's still okay to hate. So you could say whatever you want about sex offenders or whatever legislation you're trying to push at the time. You can use that as a political pawn. So we come out, we get these really crazy laws. Like, another example, a guy who, like, if you are on the internet and you accidentally go to a site and you download pornography of someone underage, in California right now, you're going to be on the registry for life. And you're in the same category as someone who has raped and, violently raped multiple women or young kids. So, and stuff like that results because, most likely some assembly person wanted to pass a certain bill because of a certain situation that was in the public eye, and so we have these ridiculous results. So, the point though is no, you can't categorize everyone together. You can't, and for me, my world was about Bethany. It was not about people Bethany's age in general. It was about a person who I chose to ignore her age. It was not about an age group. So, but our prison system and our psychiatry professions say a sex offender cannot be treated. Okay, that's incredibly wrong. You have to break it down to different categories. Like certain people, sure, maybe they can't, but others that you have labeled a sex offender definitely can. I was in jail while awaiting trial with a man who showed me his paperwork because he was hoping that I could help him. And he was labeled a sex offender because while intoxicated in a jail cell and taking a leak, a female officer walked by and he grabbed his penis and told her, "Fuck you." So he was labeled a sex offender for that act and is on the registry for life.
Wow. And he was drunk at the time.
Yeah, he was drunk. And he was just pissed off at the cops. And he was taking a leak when the female walked by. So because he grabbed himself, though, while saying that to her, they gave him a sex crime. And now he's lumped in with every other sex offender in California. Now, he can get off of the registry now because of, some reforms since then, but someone has to do the paperwork for him or take the case because he's not capable mentally of doing it himself.
Now,
but
let's talk about your trajectory with women. So you grew up a preacher's kid. So did you have like a Madonna whore complex about women when you were growing up? Developing an interest in girls. What was your attitude towards women?
Well, my dad was a Pentecostal preacher, and he wasn't necessarily the fire and brimstone kind, but we were around a lot of those people, and so it was always beat into our heads that sex is something that you wait for until marriage, and there's no purpose in dating someone unless you're planning on maybe possibly marrying them. So if you don't think that they're marriage material, you shouldn't even date them. Sorry, we went over a big bump. So I didn't date very much. I had female friends, but I didn't date very much until my senior year of high school. And then I dated my son's mother, and we were dating for 4 years before we were married. And when we were married, on our wedding night, she's still a virgin. So, kind of lived that. And she's 6 days younger than me. We were together for 10 years. The only reason that ended was because of me deciding I didn't believe in the religious stuff and deciding to produce for adult websites.
Now, wait. Let's go back to when you're married. Did you have a growing sexual frustration that there was this kind of sexual utopia out there that you were missing out on?
Sometimes I would think that, but I don't think it was any different than most married men or most men in general. You always think the grass is probably greener elsewhere. But when I started, and my ex and I split up, I started being able to be around women who would do all the things that I wanted them to do, and I found it very unfulfilling and missed the intimacy I had with my wife.
How many women did you sleep with during your porn career?
Well, I stopped counting at 100.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I didn't date very many.
Yeah.
But stop, I stopped counting 100. It was just a different life. I mean, it's just, there were some guys that would deny that they were doing the same things, some that were open about doing the same thing. But even the ones that denied it, I knew some of them personally were lying.
Well, yeah, I mean, if
So,
you're going to be a porn
there's,
producer, it'd be weird if you weren't having sex with the talent.
well, yeah, and also, I mean, it's not even necessarily for like the camera or anything. It's just that if a woman's working with you all day long in a sexual manner, a certain percentage of the time, things are going to develop between you in that genre, and you're going to want to, take them out on each other.
Yeah.
And that just happens.
Now, how did that affect your view of women, particularly knowing that if you offered them a few $100s, that they'd be willing to do things that most people would regard as degrading?
I think I bought my own bullshit, to be honest with you, which was one of my sales points to them. I said, isn't it true that old religious men made up all these rules saying that you can't behave this way, and why should it be that men can and there's no problem with it? So I personally let myself believe that same thing, and I'd say, what's different about a woman, with a sex drive or a man? And guys would kill to be paid to have sex on camera. So why should it be different for a woman? And I would tell them, I'd say, who's really being degraded? You're getting paid, or the guy who's out there slaving away at his minimum wage job out in the hot sun doing labor work so that he could, subscribe to your website and spend one of his hours' wages. Who's really being degraded here? And I kind of saw it that way at the time too.
Yeah, I mean, you're a smart guy. You're able to construct very convincing arguments to do the things that you want to do. Now, while you were in the pornography industry, did you have any sense that your soul was being degraded?
Yes, I did, especially at the beginning. When I went to Internex Expo and the AVN, the annual AVN shows in Las Vegas. The first few years, I saw things that I thought were absolutely disgusting and made me feel horrible about being part of it. But then you just start getting used to that sort of thing, and it becomes just another lifestyle. I always found, stuff like what Max Hardcore made. I found that repulsive all of my career. But some of the stuff that disgusted me at the beginning of it didn't by the end. Max Hardcore, his stuff was, he'd choke women and he'd pee in their throat and he'd do all these horrible things to them and degrade them, and he'd tell them at the beginning, the story was he'd have them park their car like a few miles away from the studio, and that way, while they were filming, they knew they'd have to walk quite a distance back to their car if they wanted to leave. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just one of the stories that people used to tell. But I do know that his content was violent and, very degrading, and others did even worse. And that sort of thing never appealed to me or became normal.
And what did you notice on how rapidly women age in the business? I mean, you get this bright, fresh 18-year-old who's enthusiastic, and by 19, she's all banged out.
Yeah, and her eyes have dimmed. Like,
Yeah.
You watch their soul die in their eyes. It just happens over and over again. They're not bright and sparkly anymore. They're dull and dead. And it was pretty sad to see. And a lot of them would lose their relationships with their family members over the work that they'd done, because especially in the early 2000s, before it was so acceptable. Fathers would be too embarrassed by what their daughters were doing, would cease talking to them and things like that.
It's kind of surprising to a lot of people that no father has gone postal on the porn industry. I mean, in a traditional society, a father would come looking for you if you photographed his daughter naked.
And something, the closest I ever got to that was a pastor whose daughter had worked for me. At the time, I hated religion so much that if I found out a girl was a pastor's daughter, I tried to get her to work even more than normal. And this one pastor called me, and at first he was upset and angry. But knowing how pastors are, since my dad was one, I turned the tables on him and started talking about, she should have to take personal responsibility for her actions. You taught her better. You and I both know that you're just trying to make up for that behavior by blaming me when I am not the one making these decisions. And so he settled way down, and by the end of it, he was trying to get me to come to his church and be saved. So that was the closest I ever got to a father trying to attack. I mean, that was just verbal.
And did you notice when you started becoming famous as an anti-porn activist and you had a tremendous amount of success, did you ever have any kind of sinking feeling that this level of success so quickly after leaving the industry was not good for your soul, or were you just feeling like, oh, this is all good, man?
So what actually happened, now I've always believed, because I've used this line a lot, I say if you tell someone who they are, that's what they'll become. So if you're someone that a person respects and you tell them who they are, that's what they'll become. So I actually tried and felt like I was doing a pretty good job for a big part of the time to live up to this position I'd been handed. Because, I mean, I'd have people from all over the world who would call me for advice. And I'd be quoted. I had books written. I wrote, and so I didn't, at the very beginning, when I first got out, I didn't feel like I should be on the stage 3 months after getting out of the industry. So I made the pastors interview me, Oprah Winfrey style, on couches and chairs up on the stage, rather than taking the spotlight myself and speaking alone. And I insisted on doing that for 3 years. 3 years was a number that I had chosen, based on various things in the Bible, actually. And after 3 years, when I was doing it alone, I felt like I was on a pretty good track. The thing in my life that ended up going off the rails was Bethany, and I had myself convinced at the time that wasn't so bad. I see it completely different now, especially after spending the time in Arkansas talking to her and getting her perspective on things. But at the time,
how did she regard her relationship with you prior to her going to the cops? Like, how was that? How did she experience that?
So at the time, she thought that that's what she wanted. But later, having reflected, and now as an adult, she told me that I had groomed her. And some of the evidence she gave was that when a guy her own age was interested, I would make sure that she felt that he was not good enough for her. So she felt like the only person who was me, that was the message being given. And so I owned that, and I said, that's definitely not what I meant, but I can see how it came across. Because I had, when she lived in my house, I encouraged her to go out on dates when she turned 16, because she had promised not to date until she was 16. And when she did turn 16, I encouraged her to go out on dates. She'd come back from those and tell me, "Oh, he doesn't compare to you." Well, because of all, the years before that, I was telling her what she should look for in a guy, and and what to avoid. One example, a guy that she had a crush on. I pulled up to drop her off at school, and she saw him, and she was about to run up and say, hello to him or whatever. And I says, "Oh, let's sit here and watch for a second and see how he behaves." And he was, flirting with every girl around. And I was saying, so I know it's flattering when he flirts with you, but if you'll notice, he's doing that with everybody. So it's stuff like that that she felt was grooming. That was me making it so that the only person who lived up to my standards was me. And this is what she told me was the message that she felt. So that's her view on it now. I mean, she has one time asked me if we could ever be together. Since getting her off the street, she asked me that one time, and I told her no. And then since then, she's never ever brought it up again.
Now, were you dating women? 2006 to 2010?
I dated my son's mother again, and there was a few that I went out on dates with, but didn't date long term. One of the reasons was when a woman sees you stand on a stage, you get a lot more attention than when you're not a guy standing on a stage, and it would feel fake to me. And I would say, it was kind of a turnoff. I wouldn't really say anything to her, but to myself, I would just say, I don't even want to take the time to get to know this person, because the only reason that she's talking to me right now is because she saw me speak from a stage. And honestly, that Bethany, I shouldn't have said her name, but there it is, began appealing to me because she saw me all the time as I was. And so, like I said, I saw her as a person who was very special to me, and I chose to ignore her age. But that's one of the things that I liked, was it's like, oh yeah, she sees me every single day as I really am, and she's still saying all these flattering things and wanting to date me and marry me and all this stuff.
Now, the book of Genesis has a profound verse. It's not good for man to be alone. And
yeah.
I mean, you were vulnerable because you were not married to a woman at the time.
Right. And the closest I came was in 2010, early in 2010, I started dating my son's mom again for 9 months. But like I had mentioned, that didn't work out. So there was others, that I would talk to for periods of time, but they just, and some of them would just build up a picture in their mind of what I must be, and I would know that's not accurate. So there was a woman in Missouri, for example, that she was constantly talking to me and calling me and writing me and wanting me to come see her, and I did a couple of times. But the person that she thought I was, I knew I wasn't. And so it was pretty lonely.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So how did your view of women change? Like, what was that transition like, moving on from being a pornographer to being a pastor? You're dealing with a very different type of woman. Did you find your brain getting cleansed? Did you have unrealistic expectations for women's bodies? What was going on?
Oh, no, I definitely didn't. Like that's one thing. After being in the adult industry for so long, I think that people are affected in various ways. But one of them is that, in my case, I appreciate bodies, all women's bodies now, and not just a specific type. Because I sought content for every category that you can imagine, and I saw beauty in all of it. But
And it's freezing a little bit here.
Same way
We'll
that,
get
to a great
back.
extent, Mormonism in America, at least till recently, is kind of like that. But Christianity, not white nationalism, not nationalism, not ethno-nationalism, but Christianity is so integral to the identity of so many
Okay,
Americans.
we're back. Okay,
man.
I lost you the last 30 seconds, so go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, we're on I-80, so there's a few spots where it cuts out. But yeah, so basically, what I was saying is that when I'm speaking, I wanted to be a good moral example, so I would pray a lot, and I would see women as God's daughter, and I would remind myself that He just has one woman for each man, and I would say, she's not mine if I'm walking in a mall or something and a attractive woman is around, or whatever the case might be. If I'm speaking to one in church, I would just repeat that in my head. She's not mine. It took a while because I was used to seeing all women for what they might earn. When I was in the adult industry, I would look at them and think, oh yeah, I could shoot for this side or that side or this category, or And so it was a change to go from a place where you saw women as dollar signs to seeing them as God's daughters who have to be respected, and realizing that He has just one of them for you and not all of them for you.
Yeah. And how long did it take you to get past, thinking about how much money, this woman could make if you shot her?
That actually took a few years. It was such a habit. Even when I was an adult, I had a girlfriend for 6 years, and we were engaged for 4 of those. And the two of us even would talk when we were walking around, and point out women and discuss what we could make.
Yeah.
So it was just, it took a while to not do that, and also I would look them up and down when I was an adult. I was sizing them up. Because I was very money driven, and so that was my primary way of looking. I first looked at what they could make for us, and then after they're working for us and I've seen them naked and they've done all this different work, then I would allow myself to get involved with them. And I had my girlfriend, fiance, whatever you want to call her, I had her consent. So it was quite the difference.
And have you maintained any friendships with people in that industry?
No. No, actually, I haven't maintained friendships with hardly anyone, because even the people that I had in the church side of things, they definitely disappeared after the situation, the legal situation that I went through. And that made me very angry for a while. I had one who had been my friend, and we were writing a book together, and I was at his house every Thanksgiving and Christmas, and always going out and doing stuff, with the family, and taking my son and going out with his family. And when I had served my time, called him up to say hello. He invited me out to lunch, and I thought, great, I just like old days. But he invited me out to lunch to tell me that I wasn't allowed to come to his church anymore. So I did not expect that from him. He's a very intelligent man. He has a doctorate level education. He's a doctor so and so, and very intelligent guy from great schools, and he's got a huge church and has been very successful. And I didn't expect him to react that way. But that's been kind of typical of most. A handful. I thought I had lots and lots of friends.
How many Christians stood by you during this time?
Are rather protect. They've stuck around. They're protective, and they're great.
And hey, how did being in the porn industry affect your relations with your family and, say, friends you grew up with?
Not too much. When I was in the industry, there weren't very many family and friends that refused to talk to me. Not even my own dad, who's a pastor. He just would avoid talking about what I did for a living. There were a few people from his churches that were very vocal about it, but I had never been really close to the vocal ones. But secretly, a lot of the people who were Christians would want to see the work I had done. There were a handful of them that asked for passwords to my website.
Free passwords.
So, yeah, of course.
What's your critique of the various Christian groups that you saw trying to work with and help people in the porn industry?
Some of them shouldn't bother. The ones that are outside picketing and yelling and telling you that you're going to burn in hell are just wasting their time. It's not going to accomplish anything. There were groups like XXX Church, though, that they would go in and they would just be kind to people and love them and bring them water and even do their makeup for them and just tell them that they were loved. And if they felt like they had had enough, there's help for them to get out. But they wouldn't push them, really. So, there's a big contrast. And then, I don't know if you heard, but did you ever hear about Shelley Lubben?
No, what's going on with her?
So she's dead now. She crashed and burned. So she had, Pink Cross, and she was very active in her work with people in the adult industry. And then her life just crashed down, and her husband broke up, and she got involved in some shady stuff and ended up dying of a drug overdose in a little.
Wow. I mean, none of that's surprising. I mean, there was always something kind of, off about her. So wow. So she was a porn performer, then she became an anti-porn activist, and then she dies of a drug overdose. So, the humanity.
Yeah. I was actually, I was surprised that she went that far. I didn't think he would always stick around, but I'm surprised she ended up dead, for sure.
Yeah, and not many people can hang around the porn industry for very long. I think Pastor Craig Gross and company moved on from the XXX Church. They now, do they have a marijuana ministry?
Yeah. Oh man, Craig. Oh my goodness. I don't really know what's up with Craig because, he went to that Christian cannabis thing, and then he went further into psychedelics, and then he started having this thing called Go to the Light or Take Me to the Light or something like that, where he would have people take psychedelics while having this certain type of experience where they lay down on a table, close their eyes, and have this, I don't know, blue light or something flashing that's supposed to make them have the most ultimate trip. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Craig. And Craig is an educated man too. He's not just, he has a degree in Christian ministry from a pretty good school, Hope International University, and I don't know what's going on with him. His son, by the way, I don't know if you knew this or not, but his son has a music career. Never got too terribly popular, but he was also in the movie Jonah. His son was with Russell Crowe. He was one of Russell Crowe's kids in the movie, and he did a few others. And I don't know.
Now, how has your attitude towards Christians changed? I assume you grew up thinking that to be a Christian is to be a good person. Then when you got into the adult industry, I assumed that you developed a more negative view of Christians, and then you became a fervent Christian, and then you experienced pretty much all your Christian friends leaving you. So talk about the relationship of the trajectory of your view of Christians.
Well, so when I was an adult, and I just hated Christians, and I took all that out on God too, and I kind of confused God and the people claiming to represent Him. But I've never returned to that hatred. I have disappointments, but I step out of my own shoes and try to understand why people behave as they do. It's still hard for me to do because, I know me and I know my intentions, and I assumed that my friends would too. But I cannot blame them. The same guy I mentioned that says I can't come back to his church. I don't hate him for that because, I have to realize that in the times we live today, if you're associating with this person, like people try to lump politicians in with Jeffrey Epstein, it's kind of similar. I'm not anywhere close to the level of Epstein, but it's kind of similar. Nobody wants to be associated, and it just kind of makes sense in this political time. I mean, it's disappointing that a pastor can't be a friend to a person who has had a moral failure without being lumped into the same category, but it's understandable too. So I don't really hate anyone. I'm just disappointed on a friendship level, but not because of their Christianity.
And what's it like moving from being a professional Christian, where that was your career and your personal life and your redemptive arc, to what are you now? Are you still Christian?
Yes, absolutely. I have, since that time, since that happened, I read the Bible cover to cover 15 times. I read the Catholic Catechism 3 times. I spent 3 hours a week with an Orthodox rabbi for a period of 6 months. More authentic, although then I thought that it was too. But yeah, I realized how little I know. And I love reading the scripture. There's never a time I've read the Bible a total now of 23 times in 8 translations in 2 languages, and I really enjoy it and get a lot out of it. My time spent for 6 months with the rabbi 3 hours a week really illuminated a lot about the Old Testament from your perspective, the Torah, I guess, that I didn't know before, and makes me understand the New even better, because every writer of the Bible was a Jew except for Luke, who wrote, Luke and Acts. So it's deepened, and it's not about talking to anybody about it. It's just for me. So, I mean, it still comes up in conversations. I love a good debate, or discussion.
Now, how do you feel about the trajectory of the United States?
I can't believe it's reality. It's so crazy. Like this time where people are canceled because they won't say that a biological male is a woman, it's like the most looniest thing that you can imagine. I don't hate anyone for thinking that they're, or wanting to be a woman or whatever, but our society is just crazy when we insist that if a person doesn't say the right thing and use the right pronouns, which grow daily, they're a bigot. It's what the heck has happened to our society. I think that our country became so successful that people have way too much time to come up with absolute stupidity. I don't know. I don't comprehend how we got to where we're at, and I don't comprehend how adults can stay in this place. It's just crazy.
And are there things that fill you with optimism or inspiration about America, or you just see primarily bad directions?
No, I think that we're heading in a trend where eventually people are going to stop being so stupid and insane and get over it. I'm optimistic about the future. I'm even less, well, for a while, the far left really bothered me and concerned me, but I have more faith in, I'm an independent, but I lean conservative. And for quite a while, I would think that most Democrats are, not people that I will ever agree with much about. But the way that the far left is taking people makes the Democrats in my life start having conversations with me that I never would have had before, and I start to respect and get more hope because they're saying, yeah, things are getting crazy. We got to do something about this. We've got to, So I feel like eventually we're going to be united, even though right now we're very separated and divided. I think that we're going to unite because right now fringe groups are controlling the narrative, and people from both sides are starting to realize that it's getting too so ridiculous that we have to work together if we want to stop the insanity.
So, do you think we overreacted to COVID, underreacted, or we handled it about right?
Well, I mean, my stepfather died of COVID, so for a while I was very upset with anyone who wouldn't get vaccinated. And at the time when he died, a vaccine would have saved him. But then, as the virus mutated and evolved, that became less the case. So I don't see how we could have done a whole lot better. Um, we went a little overboard, I think, with the masks and making everybody quarantine for so long. But I think we did better than most other countries.
And how did the masking and the social isolation and the whole COVID lockdown thing, how did that affect you?
It didn't. I refused to change much about my life. I didn't. I mean, I got vaccinated when it came out, but I never, really was so. I wore a mask if I had to, if it was required at the place I was going, and I didn't, make any fuss about it. I just, your house, your rules. But if I didn't have to, I didn't wear one, and I just went about my business. I didn't stay inside. I just lived life normal to the point that I could. Some of the places I liked going were closed because of it. But yeah, I thought, if you want to, I still know people who are wearing masks to this day and insisting on staying in their house as much as possible. I just.
And here, you're frozen there for a second. So let's see when when you're
That it
back.
can't be criticised in a way that could be in the UK.
Okay, you're back.
In many parts.
Okay, great. Hey, talk to me. We've talked about your trajectory with Christianity, with women. Talk to me about your trajectory with alcohol. I assume you were raised in a home where you were raised not to drink alcohol.
Yeah, I was, and then in the adult industry, I did a lot of that, lots of drinking. Right now, I haven't had a drink, not even a single drop, for about, let's see, it's been a month and a half. So, I when I got out of prison, I didn't get crazy with the alcohol, and sometimes I drink a lot, sometimes I drink just a few beers, and by a lot I just mean enough to get drunk. Before going in, I would drink a couple bottles of wine a night, but now I'm a professional driver, and I actually had a pretty good DUI scare, and so I just decided not to let it be part of my life at all anymore. So, I left a bar after, I don't drink, of course, while I'm out on the road driving, but came back for home time and went to a bar and had a couple of beers, and I had an encounter with police, and they thought that I might be under the influence, and so after that issue and hiring an attorney to handle it, I just decided no more. And so
How long ago was that?
that was in June. Yeah, so since June I haven't had a single drop.
And how are you different? Like when you're drinking regularly and you're completely dry, how is your life different, if at all?
Well, I miss alcohol. I do. I like having a few beers at the end of a long week. I like to go into the movie theaters that now serve alcohol, and have a little half bottle of wine like they sell, and watch a movie. I like the emotional change that takes place when you sit and have a couple of beers in a bar and listen to the to the jukebox or whatever you want to call it playing. So all of the things that I enjoy doing to relax usually include alcohol in some way. So it's difficult, but getting easier all the time to not have it, because I feel like I feel more when I've had a few drinks. I let my brain relax a little bit and stop trying to rationalize everything or look for logic in everything, and I just allow emotions to come out of songs and things like that. So I do miss that.
Yeah, I'm assuming that alcohol was a solution, right? It was a solution till it became a problem, and so the solution was it made you feel alive. It opened you up to your emotions, and it kind of turned off, say, some parts of your thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I miss it for all those reasons. So now I'm still not. I haven't found a solution to let me enter as often as I would like to into the emotional side of things. Music is probably the best for that, but alcohol can enhance music quite a bit too.
I mean, I'm just going to go out on a limb here, and I think that you're approximately 10 years in the porn industry, or that in many ways was an attempt to get in touch with a more emotional side that's otherwise kind of foreign to you. Okay, you're frozen, but did porn help open up your emotional life?
Slagging off Christianity, you will lose so many voters. And that's the
well, look, Joe Biden ends every speech saying "God bless America" and "God bless the troops."
So you have to. It's so inbuilt, you see.
Well, but let's at the same time. There's Christian nationalism, and then there's Christian nationalism. So there's an ambiguity to the term. For instance, when someone says "I'm a white nationalist," you could take that as saying he is a nationalist and he is a white person. But which is descriptively, effectively. But that's obviously not what it means. As well as you can basically say, I'm a Christian nationalist, which this is what.
Yeah, I was talking about. Was pornography a way for you to feel something intense?
Yeah, for sure it was. Yeah, you have an emotional connection with the people that work with you, and that's it might be artificial, but it seems real at the time. After you've worked together for quite a while, even during a single day, you could form this emotional bond with another person, and I liked that a lot.
Yeah. To what extent is porn a big family?
That's actually a pretty accurate way of describing it. It is a big family in many ways. Like, you go and people are really down to earth at these shows, and they come from all different backgrounds, and all different economic backgrounds too. And everybody, when I was in the business, you'd have these people making millions hanging out with brand new people who aren't making anything yet. Normally wouldn't have anything in common, but get together, and just there was a camaraderie for sure amongst the people. They're not. I mean, obviously, there's oddballs everywhere in society, but the majority of the people in porn, I wouldn't consider them all that odd.
Mm. And if you were a father of a girl, and say she's moving into her teens, what would you tell her about guys, sex, the pornography industry, strip clubs, degenerate culture?
It's a hard one because from my own perspective, I know that the more someone tried to tell me, what to avoid and what I should think, the more I wanted to be involved with exactly that. So I think I would just be open and share the stories. Like, I do have a son, and um, with him, I'm open about anything that he wants to talk about, and I'm not going to use explicit terms. Even he's an adult, he's in his 20s. Um, I'm still going to be his dad first, but I give people, my reasons, and I use my own life instead of telling someone what they should do. I say, here's why I choose to avoid. I'm not going to look at you any different. Like, for example, when I spoke at Yale University during Sex Week at Yale, we had a debate there. One of the things I said to them is, you're all intelligent people or you wouldn't be here. So I'm not going to tell you what you should think about porn. I'm just going to give you more information to consider. And then you make your own educated choice. And I think that that's the same sort of thing you have to do as a parent to an age appropriate level. Obviously, parents have more control at different stages of life. But when your kids are becoming close to becoming an adult and need to start learning to make good decisions, I think you got to let them make their mistakes, give them information to consider, and say, my thing is, you need to hear me out. You need to hear my side, and then you make your choice.
Now, what were the different types of porn that you made?
So I started off just with solo photos, and then the companies that I was doing that for, because I started, before there was enough bandwidth for video on the internet to really be viable. But as technology increased, they'd want more video. They'd want it to be hardcore. And by hardcore, I just mean people having sex with each other. And so, I didn't get into any, well, I did straight, gay, not too much gay, but a little bit, because some of our straight clients also owned gay sites. And we would do all categories from 18 to as old as we could find them. So, there's the matures, and we didn't do a huge amount of fetish stuff. We did a little bit. There's, the water sports, they would call it, which is urination. One of our clients was really big. Basically do whatever they ordered. But for my own sites, then it never really got much beyond what you'd see in a Hustler magazine. But
What
for
about
client sites, then
big beautiful women? Did you do fat women?
yeah, sure did, and that's what I was saying earlier. Like I started appreciating all the shapes and sizes, and you know, and body types of women, and really started finding all of them attractive.
And what was it like shooting gay porn?
So it was actually fun, to be honest, because of the way that it happened. We happened to have a guy who lived 15 miles from our office in Chico, where I started, that had been in a lot of gay publications. He was like a gay star. And when one of our clients who owned a mature female site asked if we would shoot twink content for his gay site, this guy responded to our ads, and he was one of the first. And he said, you know, I says, you know, I have no idea how to shoot this. And he goes, well, you're not going to be successful if you don't shoot it right, because this is a category that has to be shot right. So he trained us, actually, by showing us. He'd say, here's how I should pose, then I should do this, you know, starting off exactly like we did with the females, where he was just posing solo. And then he would recruit people to come and shoot with him. So I shot some of that, mostly when it was him as the male model, because I felt very comfortable with him as a friend. But some of it made me uncomfortable. So I would have my fiance shoot it. I'd have her do it, and I'd go to the coffee shop. So, but the parts that I did shoot, you know, with Marky, he made them fun because he was just his character. There was so much laughter going on, and in fact, it was hard sometimes, difficult, very difficult to find men who could perform on camera. For straight heterosexual sex, they might be, you know, think they're Romeos in private, but when you put them in a room with a camera, they couldn't perform. So I told Marky, I says, you know, you're a professional. Would you ever work with women? And he agreed to do it, and he had never touched a woman before. And he would be the funniest thing because he was a true professional. So when the cameras were going, he's doing what he's supposed to do. And when they stop, he's making sure the women are okay. And he's just laughing, and he's making everybody else laugh. So, and then we'd have on music stands so that he could remain aroused. We'd have these adult magazines that featured men set up on music stands just outside of the camera's view. And the funny thing was, is when I went and bought those the first time to get ready for this shoot with him, you know, and a woman, I told the books, you know, where they were still in magazine format at the actual bookstore. And I said, yeah, these aren't for me. And he's like, sure they're not. So it was pretty funny.
And what instructions did you find yourself giving to the women most often?
Well, normally what would happen is we'd recruit brand new people. We didn't live in a place that had any agents. We ran ads and billboards. So we would start off by telling them how to pose, and they would quickly get the hang of it. And then pretty soon, you know, we'd shoot the same people as often as we could. So they would start knowing what we expected, and they'd do the work for us. And then if a new project came along, which did happen pretty regularly, then just, you know, it's the same thing again. You show them the first time what you expect and guide them through it. And then a lot of them, they just do everything right on their own. We treated them a lot different. I had producers from LA come up, and every time I did, the girls would end up in tears because they're not used to being treated the way that producers from LA treat people. And but it also, on the other hand, had a lot of adverse effects on their life because of this fact. They would feel like we were their friends because that's how we would treat them. So they would do more for us than they normally would for someone else. And then when their life starts falling apart, they expect that we will make sure that everything gets removed, which was not in our power to do, remove all their content from the internet. So that was a negative part of it. Since we felt like, made them feel like they were our friends, and they'd hang out with us and come to our house and go out on the boat with us and stuff. They would do more at our request than they would have done for a producer in LA who had no emotional connection to them.
And is there anything that you miss about the porn industry? So, for example, I miss the laughter. I mean, there are a lot of funny people in the industry, and there was a sense of camaraderie and that sense of, fun and family. But how about you? Is there anything that you miss about the industry?
Yeah, I miss the exact same things that you're saying, but I also missed, I really do honestly miss taking a brand new never before seen actress and getting her naked for the first time and getting her comfortable and watching her go from being shy to feeling sexy. Now, it's a little bit graphic, what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's just true. So you take this person at the beginning of a shoot, she is shy and a little embarrassed, and by about halfway through it, sometimes she's dripping on the counter because she's very aroused by what she's doing. And you make her feel like she's sexy. That was a cool transformation to watch. And it didn't have anything to do with sex for me. It was just seeing that, well, I guess it does in a way. Making her feel like she's sexy was what I do miss doing it because it's a form of altering someone's mind. This person never in their life thought that they'd be doing porn, because a lot of them we recruited, they're college students coming to Chico State to get an education, and they decide to work for us for $500 a day, starting pay, rather than go work at a coffee shop and bring home $200 every few weeks, and with the part-time work. So they didn't come expecting to ever do porn. It's just the money's enticing and the people are friendly. My fiance make them feel comfortable with us and make it feel like it wasn't so bad. So, the very things that really would hurt people's lives, I do miss that part of it because, I'm just being honest. You're manipulating somebody and making them think it's their idea, and there's a sense of, I don't know, power is not the right word because you don't feel, it's not really a power feeling. It's just
it is a power that you can transform someone. You can take someone and turn them into something completely different.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, because we even had virgins that would work for us, and I would never let them do hardcore. I had too much respect for virginity. Never did a girl lose her virginity on a camera on my set, in front of a camera on my set. But she could do solo.
Yeah, she can do solo scenes.
That I'm talking about would be very self-conscious at first and shy because they have zero experience. And then by the end of just a few shoots, they're looking confident and walking different. And, and what would end up happening a lot of times, though, is they would end up losing their virginity to somebody else, a friend in their personal life, because now all of a sudden they're feeling sexy. But it was just, so I guess maybe that is a type of power, but when you just get someone to do something that's very outside their normal comfort zone and it becomes their comfort zone.
And what was their career trajectory like in the adult business to the extent that you're aware of it?
So not too many of the ones we recruited would ever go on to do anything that we didn't have them involved with. But there were some that would end up going down to LA, and some who became pretty successful at it, some who even, were Playboy Playmates and Penthouse Pets. And, when I say Penthouse Pet, the first one that comes to mind is a girl named Chantel, and she ended up becoming a Penthouse Pet and traveling all over the world for Penthouse. And but the normal trajectory was they'd work for us until we couldn't find them any more work. And then oftentimes we'd bring on a new client because we became more and more known to people. And then all the same actresses could work yet again. And I say actress because we didn't really have any long-term males. Males would come and go. And that was one of the reasons why at the beginning of my career I would never touch a woman on camera, but by the end of it, sometimes I would do videos with some of them because we couldn't find steady males. So I just told my fiance, well, I could do it.
And could you?
Yeah.
Were you a good, solid performer?
I was able to because, I'm performing in my own house, in my own comfort zone. And, so if I would have been in the same position as the regular male, then, that came in to work for us, it probably would have been the same thing. Because if you think about it, he's coming into a place where he's not comfortable. He's expected to perform. He's expected to hold out as long as we want him to before he finishes. He's expected to even get hard on command. And there's all these people around and there's lights. So it's kind of difficult. But, it's different, for me because it's my location. It's my people around, and everybody that if I'm not comfortable with them being around, they're just not going to be around. Whereas the males that we hire have no choice who's around them.
And what was your fiance's reaction? Good job, Donnie. You really rocked that scene.
She did not like to watch it. No, she wouldn't like to watch it. But she believed me because I was telling her the truth. That this is not something that is a threat to you on an emotional level, because I don't want to date any of these people, and I didn't. I wanted to date her. I was very crazy about her. I wanted to, we were engaged, and so I was like, it's sex, and that's all it is, and it's not even that really, because it's work, so it's completely different than normal sex. So, and I also let her play around a little herself. So.
Now, you talked about these women, that their lives started to fall apart. Was there any common trajectory? Were there any common things that would come up when their lives would start to fall apart?
Well, so what a difference it is today compared to then. I got out in 2006. And since 2006, porn is more mainstream, and we have OnlyFans, and people don't lose careers over porn anymore, but they did that. So a lot of times a girl would get to her education, and then if she was trying to work for a well-known company, she'd get fired or wouldn't get the job at all to begin with because of the work she'd done for me. So one girl went to work for Hewlett Packard, but then when her coworkers found out, it caused such a ruckus amongst the other coworkers that she was let go. Another girl, she was in the police academy up in Chico at Butte College, and they let her go halfway through it because she can't be a cop. It violated the morality clause to have been in porn. So that was the case, and then they'd be treated different, even out in public in Chico, because we were known, and we would always put new girls on my website, And enough people locally were members that they'd find out, and then the girls would be treated different. Even at the bars, people would just make assumptions that if they worked for us, then it's okay to touch them, and stuff like that. So it ended, like I had mentioned earlier, family relationships too, or damaged them. I remember one girl, she begged me to get all of her content removed from the internet because her dad had come out to his car covered with images of his daughter after work. One day somebody had covered his car with it, and he was so ashamed of her that he wouldn't talk to her. And she's like, I used to be a daddy's girl, and now he won't talk to me. Of course, she said that while she's sobbing. And then some people would have their photos stapled to trees on campus. One girl, she had a bunch of her friends. She was 18, but she was a senior in high school. But since she was 18, she could legally work. I didn't know she was a senior because, all she has to do is show me that she's 18 with her ID, and, she's legal. So she comes a few weeks later, though, and says that, at the time, email was very popular. So people were emailing her photos around to each other, and she was afraid of her dad finding out. She told her mom, but her dad had a health condition, so she wanted all of her content removed from the sites she'd been on so far. And we started contacting the sites, and some of them said, sure, but you're going to have to pay even more than we did for the content. So her mother starts paying off these websites to remove content of her daughter. And then when the father finally does find out, because he still did, he was just like, oh, all right, dude, that's cool. So their whole point in making all that effort to remove it was because they thought that it would make his health deteriorate, and he just didn't really care once he did find out.
Now, was appearing in pornography the beginning of a downward trajectory for many of these women, such as into drug use, prostitution?
Yeah, for some.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not for all, but for a significant amount. Yeah. The one that bothers me the very most. So there's a girl, we called her Karma. She had her own solo site. She did stuff with guys on it too sometimes, but it was mostly just of her. She became real paranoid, used a lot of drugs, passed out at parties. Guys impregnated her while she was passed out. She got heavier into drugs. When she was down and out, she'd always call me for help, so I never changed my cell phone number. I really cared about her a lot. But this continued even after we stopped working with her. She was always afraid that people had seen her online, so she never thought that anyone truly thought she was cute, that they'd just seen her online. And when I was locked up, because to that day, I still hadn't changed my cell phone number, even after I'm speaking, she wouldn't take advantage. But if she was down and out and needed help, she'd call, and she knew I'd be there, and I always would, and I'd go and help her out. I'd buy her feminine products or a new cell phone or whatever it was that she needed at the time, or just listen. Well, when I was locked up, she hung herself from in a park with the chain from a swing, and I know that wouldn't have happened if I would have been there to answer a phone call.
And what about others? Was there more than one who committed suicide?
She's the only suicide that I knew of. There were others that tried and didn't succeed and got help. There were many who got strung out on drugs. There were several who started prostituting because it's not that big of a leap from getting paid on camera to being paid off camera.
Yeah. And what about murdered? Any of them end up getting murdered?
Not that come to mind. I can't think of any that did. I can think of plenty who ended up getting diseases. But yeah.
Yeah, it comes with a huge toll. And how important was lighting and makeup to making these women attractive? Because often there's a night and day difference between the porn star made up and the porn star without makeup.
Well, some of them, that was the case. But we kind of specialized in the more amateur look. So with that, the lighting has to be professional, but the model has to be girl next door. So we would normally not have them do much more than they'd normally do just to go out. We wanted them to basically look very approachable and real. But then, there were a few. There was a handful of them that they reached a level where they're in publications that, make them up heavily, and they don't look anything at all like themselves. My personal preference was the way that they naturally looked, and I'm like, ew, I don't like how she looks in there. But a girl posing in Penthouse or Playboy, for example, looks a whole lot different than when she was posing for or working for my websites.
Now, the news industry has taken a similar trajectory to the porn industry. It's basically dead as a business after 2007. Do you ever find yourself paying to read news? Do you subscribe to any newspapers, or what's your relationship like to journalism?
So I do subscribe to the Sacramento Bee, although I'm going to cancel it because I don't read it enough. I do pay Ben Shapiro because I just love to listen to that guy talk. I think he's brilliant. Even if I don't agree with all the things he says, I just think he's brilliant. So I will pay, to support the Daily Wire. And that's about it. There's not any others that I'm loyal to. I just, I read whatever pops up in my Apple News app.
Do you pay for Apple News Plus?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's a pretty good deal. $10 a month, and you get access to 100 magazines and 100 newspapers, and that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I like that.
Do you find yourself a little skittish or reluctant to get to know people, given that they are going to find out about your whole turbulent journey?
Oh yeah. I mean, only the last part. The with the teenager. I didn't care what people thought about anything else before then, but I'm pretty ashamed of letting myself make that mistake. So I don't get close to hardly anyone. People invite me over who do know and want to help me, because a lot of people, they just want to help, and so there's certain people that, hey, come on over, we're having this get together, we're having that one, come on over. And I'm thinking, people are going to ask too many questions. Someone might Google my name, and there we go. So I just avoid, I do a lot of camping. I do a lot of going to the movies, both things by myself.
Which is precisely what got you into trouble 10 years ago.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I guess it is. But yeah, and I do a lot of working. So, but I mean, I'm trying to accept such invitations more often. Just 2 days ago, I accepted one I didn't really want to accept. Went to dinner with a group of people. There's the thing is that you never know how people are going to react. So the thing that concerns me most is how it reflects on the ones who do support me. Because I've got such a, I can be quite argumentative. So if it was just based on how things reflected on me, it wouldn't be so bad. But this experience, when the Bible in the New Testament says that there are wages to sin, what it doesn't tell you is that it's not only the sinner that pays them. So a lot of people in my life pay the price for being in my life. And that's the part that's hard.
Mm. And what do you think it might take for you to forgive yourself?
I have finally done that and I didn't until the time I mentioned in Arkansas when we made up. When she and I forgave each other, I was able to forgive myself. I talked to her, like I said, just about every day, and I love those conversations. And they'll be about just random stuff. Like today, she was telling me about how she's going to go clothes shopping on Monday, and then she was asking me about my opinions on where she should live, and stuff like that, as far as this house or that house. So, it's just normal everyday conversations. But I love them because, as I've told her many times, I believe that God likes to restore relationships. I also believe, and I told her this too, that I used to have a lot more favor with him than I do now. And I believe that he's allowing me to realize just how serious my actions were. But I don't ever feel like he doesn't love me. There's just consequences to the actions that we take. So I feel I have a lot less favor with him than I did before. But I don't let that keep me from forgiving myself. I've forgiven myself. He's forgiven me. But I am also realistic and realize that there are long-term effects. There's cause and effect to all of our actions. The Bible's full of that. David paid a huge price for his sin with Bathsheba. And even him, who was called a man after God's own heart, couldn't get away from those consequences.
Okay, Donny, I gotta run off. Any final words for this evening?
No, it's just been nice to talk to you, and look forward to saying hello again at some point.
Sounds good, man.